All right, let's just jump right in. We all live and die by our dashboards, right? They're supposed to be our source of truth, the thing that tells us what's working and what's not. But what if? What if that truth is really just a beautifully designed lie? What if you're pouring your budget into all this noise while totally missing the real signals that are actually moving your business forward? Today, we're going to talk about a framework that cuts through all that by asking one simple, powerful question. What actually caused this deal to happen? And see, this right here, this is the core of the problem. It's not about getting more data or a fancier tool. The issue is that our multi-touch attribution models, the systems we've spent years building to assign credit to every little touch point, they've been working overtime to answer a question that our CEO, our CFO, they were never even asking in the first place. And here's why that's so incredibly important. Check out this number. A mind-blowing 92% of B2B buyers already have a specific vendor in mind before your formal tracking systems even have a chance to kick in. Just let that sink in for a second. The most important part of the entire journey, the moment they form a preference, happens completely in the dark. It's totally invisible to the very dashboards we trust to guide our decisions. So yeah, this brings us right to the heart of the matter. The problem isn't your tech stack. It's the question we've programmed it to answer. We have built these incredibly sophisticated, complex systems to track every bit of activity, but we've almost completely failed to measure the one thing that actually matters: real, measurable impact. This slide just lays out the disconnect perfectly. Look on the left. That's your dashboard's question. What touched the deal? It's tracking every ripple in the pond, every little interaction. But then look on the right. That's your CEO's question. What moved the deal? They don't care about the ripples. They want to know about the rocket ship, the one or two things that created liftoff and actually changed the outcome versus us doing nothing at all.
And this whole fundamental difference, it really just boils down to one of the oldest ideas in data analysis, that huge gap between correlation and causation. Our dashboards, they are geniuses at showing us correlation, all the things that happen to be going on around the same time a deal closed. But they are completely blind to causation, the one or two key things that actually cause that deal to happen.
Let's just break this down visually for a sec. Over on the left, you've got correlation. See that? It's that tangled mess of activity, it's all the noise. It tells you what happened alongside the deal. But on the right, that's causation. It's like a focused beam of light. That's the signal. It zeroes in on the specific moments that truly influence the final decision. And that is the repeatable magic that we're all trying to find and bottle up. Okay, to make this super clear, let's tell a quick story. So meet the buyer from Deal A. They're on the fence, a little worried about whether a company like theirs can really get results with your solution. Then they download a case study about a similar company. And boom, it resolves that one last critical doubt. They sign the contract. In this case, that case study, it was causal. It made the difference. Now, let's meet the buyer from Deal B. Their CEO walked in and said, "Buy this solution." So the deal was going to happen no matter what. This buyer downloaded the exact same case study, but only because their procurement team needed it for some checklist. It had zero influence on their decision. But here's the real kicker. Your attribution dashboard gives that case study the exact same amount of credit for both deals. It sees the touch, but it's completely blind to the truth. So, what's the big takeaway here? It's this. The only person on the planet who knows the real difference between Deal A and Deal B is the buyer. They are your only source of truth. No piece of software can tell you what was going on in their head or what was said in their internal meetings. The only way to find out what really, truly mattered is to just ask them. And this brings us to the solution. And it's not another dashboard or some fancy new algorithm. It's a completely different way of thinking. A new system called the Causality Engine, and it's a framework designed not to just report on the past, but to actually learn from buyer-confirmed evidence about what drives real outcomes.
Let's get really precise about what this is. The Causality Engine is basically a system for interviewing your new customers right after they sign on the dotted line. It completely replaces all that pre-purchase guesswork about what might be influential with hard post-purchase evidence of what actually was. It's a fundamental shift that turns marketing and sales from just a reporting function into a true learning system.
So how does this actually work in practice? Well, it all hinges on two critical checkpoints. First, you talk to your new customer right after the deal closes, usually within a week or two while their memory of the decision is still super fresh. This is where you capture what moved them to sign. Then, a couple of months later, you check in again to see if the things they thought were important actually delivered the value they were hoping for. So, how do you actually do it? Well, the engine is powered by 5 very specific diagnostic questions. And listen, these aren't just random conversation starters. They are precisely worded tools designed to carefully dissect the buyer's entire decision-making process and isolate the real causal factors. And here they are, the 5 causal prompts. You've got the elimination question, which helps you find the absolute deal breakers, the ordering question, which reveals the real sequence of events, the internal defense question shows you what content they used to sell the idea internally, the risk resolution question uncovers what almost killed the deal, and finally, my favorite, the misattribution check, which tells you what you can safely stop doing. Well, let's zoom in on the most powerful one of all, the elimination question. This is pure counterfactual thinking. Just imagine asking your new customer, hey, if you had never seen our ROI calculator, would you still have moved forward with us? Their answer, right then and there, instantly tells you if that calculator was a critical, causal driver they needed for the CFO or just a helpful little accelerator, or maybe just non-causal noise. This one question can filter out 60 to 70% of all the irrelevant touch points. It's amazing. Now look, collecting all these stories is fantastic, but the real power comes when you turn them into structured data. The goal here is to move from a bunch of anecdotal interview notes to a quantifiable, analyzable dataset that can actually guide your strategy and, most importantly, your budget. And here's exactly how you make it actionable. You create what's called a causality codex right inside your CRM. So for every single deal, you codify what you learned in the interview. What was the #1 primary driver? What were the 1 or 2 things that accelerated the deal? And, crucially, what did the buyer confirm was just non-causal noise? By explicitly tracking the noise, you can finally see which activities are just generating clicks instead of contracts, and you can finally stop wasting money on them. And when you do this, it leads to this massive, positive shift in your organization. Because when you move away from arguing about attribution and start analyzing real causality, the entire dynamic just changes. Those endless channel wars between marketing and sales over who gets credit for a deal, they just kind of evaporate. Honestly, the outcome here is pretty transformative. That friction between marketing and finance, it starts to disappear because you're finally speaking the same language, the language of causal impact. You can make investment decisions way faster and with a ton more confidence. And instead of fighting over who gets credit, the entire revenue team is finally pulling in the same direction, focused on one shared goal, understanding what buyers confirm actually works, and then just doing more of that.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. Your current dashboards, they are a perfect, flawless record of what happened. They show every touch, every click, every download. But your buyers, they hold the key to what actually mattered. They know the one conversation, the one piece of content, the one proof point that really turned the tide. So the real question is, as you plan for your next quarter, which source of truth are you going to bet your budget on?